"You cut your hair." He didn't say hello. He didn't ask where she'd been. 3 years of complete silence, and the first words out of Orion Ashford's mouth when he walked through the door of her cafe, the one she had built from nothing in a town she had chosen specifically because nothing ever happened there, were 4 words that managed to be both completely ordinary and the most devastating thing anyone had said to her in years. Mina didn't drop anything. She'd spent 3 years training herself not to drop things. She was behind the espresso machine when he came in, and she felt the shift in the room before she looked up. The particular change in air pressure that happened when something unfamiliar and slightly dangerous entered a space, the same way her body had learned to notice it on empty streets and in parking garages and in the ordinary daily inventory of exits she conducted without thinking. She looked up, and the coffee cup in her hand did not fall. That was the only thing she could be proud of in the first 3 seconds. He looked the same. That was the part that felt unfair. 3 years of what she assumed had been legal battles and organizational restructuring, and the very efficient redirecting of his considerable attention onto literally anything else, and Orion Ashford looked like a man who had simply walked in from the cold. He was wearing a dark coat she didn't recognize. His collar was open. He looked at her across 6 feet of hardwood floor and 3 other customers who had stopped pretending to read their laptops, and his expression did not change. "Can I help you?" she said in the voice she used for strangers. Something moved at the edge of his jaw. "Yes," he said, "you can." He sat down at the corner table, the table nobody sat at by choice because it faced the window instead of the room, but she noticed immediately that he'd angled the chair so his back wasn't fully to the door, which meant some habits survived, even when the man attempting to appear casual was trying very hard to appear casual. She made his coffee without asking what he wanted. She remembered. She had not wanted to remember, but some things sat below the level of choice. Her morning had started the way her morning started now. Up at 5:30 before Ines woke up, coffee made in the apartment above the shop, 20 minutes of silence. She used to recalibrate herself for the day. Then Ines, who woke with the decisive energy of someone who had made up her mind to exist completely and thoroughly, and who required shoes and breakfast, and exactly one specific stuffed rabbit in that order, or the sequence of the morning collapsed. Then the neighbor from 2B, Mrs. Gaston, who watched Ines until the preschool 2 blocks away opened at 8, and who had never once asked a question Mina didn't want to answer, which was the most important qualification Mina had looked for when she chose this building, this town, this version of her life. The cafe opened at 6. It was called Steady, which she'd chosen because it was the thing she most wanted to be and had to keep reminding herself to practice. Orion drank his coffee with both hands wrapped around the mug the way he always had, like he was trying to absorb the heat, and he watched her work for 20 minutes without saying anything. The other customers left one by one. The 9 o'clock lull was real and useful, and today she was extremely aware of it. 4 months, he said, when the last customer had gone. She wiped down the counter. "What?" "I found you 4 months ago." He set the mug down. "I wanted to understand why before I came." "And do you," she said, "understand?" "No," he said, "but I'm here anyway." She put her hands flat on the counter and looked at him, the man she'd been married to for 14 months and running from for 36, and told herself that the fact of him being here did not have to mean anything she wasn't ready for it to mean. "There's a black sedan," he said before she could speak. "It's been parking on Birch Street, half a block down, twice a week for the last 3 weeks. Different plates each time. Same car." He held her gaze. "It's not mine." She had noticed the sedan. She had told herself she was being paranoid. "Whose is it?" she said. It came out flat, not a question. "A man named Hadwell. He's a private investigator, but the kind that takes contracts that actual investigators don't." He paused. "He was hired 14 months ago, before I found you, which means whoever hired him wasn't using my resources." The coffee machine hissed behind her. She reached over and turned it off. "Your father," she said. Orion was quiet for a moment. I thought he was in the care facility, I thought. He stopped himself, reset his jaw. My father has been running his own operation parallel to mine for at least 2 years, possibly longer. I didn't know. Mina took her apron off, folded it, set it on the counter. The action of having something to do with her hands was the only reason she wasn't standing there like someone bracing for impact. We need to talk, she said, not here. She put the back in 15 sign on the door. They sat at the table in the kitchen, the one she used for deliveries and scheduling, and the occasional moment of total silence when the front of house got to be too much. She'd never had anyone she didn't completely trust in this room. She was aware that the categories were shifting and that she hadn't caught up to them yet. I heard a phone call, she said. She hadn't planned to start there, but starting seemed to require a fixed point, and that was the one she had. The night before you flew back from Singapore, 3 a.m, I was getting water. Your office door was cracked. He was very still. The voice said a woman named Reva Castillo had been taken care of, that the story was buried, that anyone who came looking would find nothing. She kept her voice even. Reva Castillo was a journalist. She died 6 months before that. Car accident, ruled accidental. She looked at him. I thought it was you. Orion's hands were flat on the table. He was doing the thing she remembered him doing when he was managing something large and keeping it out of his face, working the jaw, just slightly, the muscle beneath the ear. It wasn't me, he said. I know that now. Mina. Something shifted in his voice, the controlled version giving way to something that was trying not to be raw and wasn't entirely succeeding. I wouldn't. I know that now, she said again, quieter. I didn't know it then. I had Enos, and I had 8 hours, and I had been building an exit strategy in my head for 2 weeks because I'd already been afraid of something I couldn't name, and when I heard that call, I had a name for it. She looked at the table. I used it. The silence between them had the particular weight of something true being said out loud for the first time. The voice in the office, he said carefully. Your satellite phone, the one you keep for the Singapore operations. I know your voice, Orion. I thought I did. She pressed her lips together. It was very close. He closed his eyes for 2 seconds. When he opened them, something had settled in his face. My father was in that office. I gave him access to the building when his diagnosis came through. I thought he wanted to walk the floors one more time. Sentimental. He said the word like it had let him down. He was running his own contracts on my phone, on my servers. He paused. I didn't find the Castillo name until 7 months ago, when I started looking for what my father had actually been doing. Mina was quiet. She thought about the night she had left, the specific quality of the silence in the house at 3 a.m., the way she'd stood outside that office door with Enos's monitor in her hand and felt the floor of her understanding tilt in a direction she hadn't expected. She had been so certain, and she had built 3 years on that certainty. Reva Castillo isn't dead, she said. He looked at her. I know her, Mina said. I didn't know that I knew her until this morning, but I do. There's an online community for single mothers. I joined when Enos was 6 months old because I needed. She paused, choosing the word carefully. Something. Someone who wasn't going to ask about where I came from. She looked at the window above the sink. There's a woman I've been messaging for almost 2 years. Goes by a username, @QuietGarden. We talk about Enos sometimes, about running a business, about what it feels like to build a life from scratch and still wake up some mornings feeling like you're one wrong breath away from it collapsing. She turned back to him. I know her writing. I'd know it in my sleep. This morning, before I opened up, I had a message. It just said, he's closer than you think. Check who your regular at the corner table is. I didn't know what it meant until you walked in. Orion absorbed that slowly. She's been watching the town. She's been watching for Hadwell. She knows what he looks like. She's been running from your father's contracts for 2 years. I think she found me because we're both what he's been looking for. What does he want with her? She has a file. The real story on the Castillo investigation, evidence she compiled before she faked her death. It implicates your father's firm in the suppression of a federal investigation, and the deaths of two people who were going to testify. She kept her voice level. She's been sitting on it because the moment she releases it, she has to become real again. And becoming real means becoming findable. Orion was quiet for a long time. She's been watching you for 2 years, he said. She could have released it before now. She was waiting for something. What? Mina looked at him. I think she was waiting for you to find me. The kitchen was quiet. Somewhere above them in the apartment, Mrs. Gaston was probably reading to Ines from the book about the rabbit who couldn't find his hat, which Ines would correct her on approximately 4 times, because she had the entire thing memorized and had opinions about pacing. Orion looked at the table, then at her. What do you need? He said. I need to get to Margie Solis before Hadwell does. Margie is the woman who helped me build the documentation when I left. She knows where I am. If Hadwell finds her, he'll know everything. Then we go now, he said. She stopped. I need to make sure Ines is somewhere safe first. He said nothing, but she felt the word land in the room between them. Ines. The word that contained the 3 years she hadn't told him about. She's upstairs, Mina said. She's 3. She held his gaze. I'll explain everything. Not right now. Right now I need to know she's safe and that we're moving. Something crossed his face that she didn't have a name for, the specific geography of a man receiving information that rearranged his entire map of the past 3 years and choosing, very deliberately, to set the rearrangement aside because the present demanded it. I have people 2 blocks out, he said. Nobody comes in or out of this building without my knowledge. Ines doesn't leave that apartment. She looked at him. Then she said, okay. They moved. Margie Solis lived 40 minutes north in a house that looked exactly like every other house on the road, which was the point. She had retired from 15 years in property law with a specific and practical expertise in documentation, and she had helped Mina build a clean identity from scratch over the course of 3 late-night phone calls and 1 careful in-person meeting. Mina had never asked her why she was willing. Margie had never offered. Some things work better as an agreement between 2 people who understood the practical reality of the world without needing to explain it to each other. Mina called her from the car. Margie picked up on the second ring. I know, Margie said, before Mina could speak. The woman with the garden account messaged me 10 minutes ago. I'm already packed. She sent you. Said you'd be calling. Said to tell you she's releasing the file today, regardless of what happens next. A pause. Said you'd know what that meant. Mina looked out the window at the road unwinding ahead of them. Don't go anywhere. We're 40 minutes out. I'll make coffee, Margie said, and hung up. Orion was driving. She looked at his hands on the wheel, the familiar economy of the way he moved, and thought about 14 months of mornings she had spent watching those hands and talking herself out of what she felt about them, because feeling things completely had always seemed like a risk she couldn't justify. Your father, she said, the care facility. He checked himself out 8 months ago. Orion's voice was flat. I didn't know until last week. The staff assumed I had been informed. I hadn't. He paused. He's been conducting operations through 3 shell entities I didn't know existed, building towards something I don't fully understand yet, but the center of it is the Castillo investigation. Whatever's in that file. He kept his eyes on the road. He's been looking for your Margie for 2 years. He found her 6 days ago. Then why hasn't Hadwell moved on her? Because Hadwell was also tasked with finding you. My father wants both of you at the same time. Fewer loose ends. She thought about that, the calculation of it, the specific cold logic of a man who treated other people's lives as variables in an equation he was running. He sounds like someone I used to know, she said quietly. Orion glanced at her briefly. He didn't ask. She was grateful for that. Margie was on her porch when they pulled in, 72 years old, silver-haired, carrying a bag that suggested she'd packed for a week, with the organized efficiency of someone who had thought through this scenario before. She looked at Orion with the frank appraisal of a woman who had spent 15 years reading people across legal tables. You're the husband, she said. I am, he said. Said Margie, which contained a significant amount of information, and then she got in the car. They were 20 minutes back toward town when Orion's phone lit up. He glanced at the screen. His expression went still in the specific way she had come to understand meant the news was bad enough to require management. Hadwell moved up his timeline, he said. He's at the café. Her chest went cold. Ines. My people have the building. She's not accessible. His voice was very even, but he's trying. Mina looked at the road ahead and thought about her daughter, with the rabbit tucked under one arm and the way she said mama with the accent on the second syllable, like it was a complete sentence and a question at the same time. She thought about 3 years of building something specific and fragile and entirely hers. She thought about what it meant that all of it had just come to a single point. What do we do? She said. We call it, he said. Riva releases the file. My legal team files with the federal office simultaneously. I have the documentation on my father's parallel operations ready. I've been preparing it for 7 months. The moment it's in the hands of the right people, Hadwell has no reason to be standing outside your building. And your father. Orion was quiet for a moment. My father is an old man who has spent 30 years believing the rules didn't apply to him, he said. He's going to find out that they do. She made the call. At Quiet Garden picked up in 2 rings, and the voice was nothing like she'd expected. Clear and deliberate, with the slightly formal cadence of someone who had spent years being very careful about how they said things. It's time, Mina said. I know, Reva Castillo said. I've been ready for 2 years. I was waiting for you to be ready. I wasn't sure I was. I know you are. A pause that felt like a hand on the shoulder. Your daughter has a spectacular name, by the way. I've been imagining her for 2 years from your descriptions. She sounds like someone worth all of this. Mina closed her eyes for 1 second. She is, she said. She really is. The file went live at 12 minutes past 11. By noon, Hadwell had been detained by federal agents who had been, as it turned out, looking for exactly this kind of thread to pull on. By 2 in the afternoon, the news had reached enough places that Clement Ashford's network of shell entities was doing exactly what such networks did when suddenly exposed to daylight, collapsing from the edges inward with the specific efficiency of a structure that had been built to look solid and was actually built only to look solid. Orion handled most of it by phone. She let him. She went back to the café and opened the door and turned the espresso machine back on, and served coffee to people who had no idea what had just happened and probably never would. At 4 o'clock, Margie sat at the corner table and drank a latte and looked around the room with the expression of someone taking quiet inventory. Nice place, she said. I built it, Mina said. I know you did. Margie set the cup down. How are you actually? Mina thought about the honest version of that answer. I don't know yet, she said. Ask me in a week. Orion came back at closing time. He helped her stack the chairs without being asked. He didn't say much. She noticed that about him, the specific quality of his silence, which had always been the kind that wasn't waiting to be filled, just existing in parallel with whatever else was happening. She had missed that. She had not let herself notice that she missed it. Ins, she said, when the last chair was up. I know. She doesn't know anything about you. I never. She stopped. I didn't want to build her towards something that might never happen. I didn't want her growing up with the shape of someone missing. He was looking at the window. I understand, he said. Do you? No, he said honestly. Not completely, but I'm trying to. He turned. I'm not here to make claims. I'm not here to show up with legal rights and demand a schedule. He held her gaze. I'm here because she's mine and your. He stopped. His jaw worked. You're you. And I spent 3 years being angry at you for something I now understand was built out of fear rather than indifference. And the anger was easier to carry than the alternative. She was quiet. The alternative being that you left because you were terrified, he said, and that you were terrified because you loved something you didn't trust yourself to hold on to. and that the thing you didn't trust wasn't me." He paused. "It was yourself." She looked at him. He wasn't wrong. She had known he wasn't wrong since approximately 20 minutes into the conversation that morning and had been working around the fact of it ever since. "My mother loved my father completely," she said. "No reservations, no held-back parts. He used it. For 20 years he used how much she loved him to manage her, where she went, who she spoke to, what she believed about herself." She set her hands flat on the counter. "I decided when I was 19 that I wasn't going to be manageable, that I was going to keep something back, some part of myself that nobody had the handle on." She looked at him. "And then I married you, and I was running out of parts to keep back. So when I heard that call, part of me," she stopped, drew a breath. "Part of me was almost relieved, because it gave me a reason, a real one. Something I could point to that wasn't just that I was terrified of how much I needed you to be exactly what I thought you were." The silence after that was very different from the other silences. "You could have asked me," he said. "I know. You were afraid of being wrong," he said it quietly, "or afraid of being right, that I wasn't what you'd built me into." She didn't answer. The truth of it sat between them, plain and a little painful in the way. True things sometimes were when you'd been carrying them for a long time and finally set them down somewhere permanent. "I'm still here," he said. "That's all I can offer right now. I'm still here, and I would like to know her, and I would like to try to be worth the version of me you were afraid of losing." She looked at him for a long moment, the man she had run from, the man who had not, she now understood, done the thing she'd run from him for. The man who had found her 4 months ago and waited, and who had come in this morning and said, "You cut your hair," like it was the most important thing, like every other question could wait. "Come back tomorrow," she said, "when the cafe opens. Innie's comes down at 7. She's going to look at you and ask you directly who you are, because she does that with everyone, and I am not going to answer for you." Something moved in his face, the guard dropping just slightly. "What do I say?" "I don't know," Mina said. "Say something true." He nodded once. He picked up his coat. He stopped at the door. "She has your eyes," he said, "from a photo I found. In a local paper 18 months ago. She was at the pumpkin festival." He paused. She was holding about 6 pumpkins and looked extremely serious about it. Mina felt something unknot in the center of her chest. She takes pumpkins very seriously. "Good," he said. "She should," and he left. He was there when she unlocked the door at 6:15 the next morning. He didn't come inside yet. He stood on the sidewalk with coffee from somewhere else, which she took as a sign of respect for the machine, and he waited until she had the lights on before he came in. He sat at the corner table. He ordered coffee. He held the mug with both hands and looked out at the street beginning to wake up, and she watched him from behind the counter and thought about the particular difficulty of rebuilding trust. Not in another person, but in your own ability to hold something carefully without already planning the exit. At 7:12, feet on the stairs. Eanes appeared at the kitchen doorway wearing one shoe and carrying the other one, hair doing something remarkable. Rabbit tucked under one arm with the resigned authority of a child who had very specific ideas about how mornings worked. She looked at the man at the corner table. He looked at her. Eanes crossed the room with the directional certainty of a 3-year-old who had decided something and was now executing it. She stopped in front of him. "Who are you?" she said. Orion looked at Mina. She gave him nothing, just watched. He looked back at Eanes. He thought about it for one genuine second. She could see him thinking, see the weight of the question landing the right way. And then he said, "I'm someone who's been hoping to meet you for a very long time." Eanes considered this with the gravity it deserved. "Do you want a cookie?" she said. "Mama makes the good ones." "I'd like that," he said, "very much." Mina turned back to the espresso machine. Through the window, the morning light was doing what morning light did. Coming in, low and gold across the counter she had built, and the floor she had chosen, and the room she had made into something that was entirely, deliberately, stubbornly hers. She thought, okay. She thought, This is the shape of it. She made the coffee. She put out the sign. She opened for the day.